Technology has always been advanced to gain the advantage at war. Many of the technology that we use today is a result of an attempt to gain the upper hand in conflict. That includes film, from black and white to color, and from stationary to handheld. Humans went everywhere to capture science on film. And these are the weapons of war on film. Copper was said to be one of the first metals used for swords. It is a metal that can be considered reasonably pliable. However, this pliability often caused quite the challenge, as it would deform in battle from the heavy blows and slashes. They would have to use heat to reform each blade once they have returned from battle. The Copper Age ended with the discovery of tin, as it would spark an evolutionary step in sword technology. After testing various combinations of copper and tin, they arrived at the most effective formula: 90% copper and 10% tin. This alloy would be known as bronze, a metal that was much stronger than copper and would be the metal of choice for over 1,000 more years. For this time period of the dawn of mankind to 1200 BC, we have selected the film The Bible in the Beginning from 1966, starring George C. Scott and Sir Richard Harris. It is a film that depicts the first 22 chapters of the book of Genesis, from the creation to the first family to the use of flint stone edge weapons, such as the earliest versions of the sword, arrows, and spears. We would then see both copper and bronze swords in every battle and every skirmish. The animated film The Prince of Egypt from 1998 will continue where we left off with the Bible. The bulk of the film focuses on the reign of Ramses the Great during 1279 BC and 1217 BC. Under this pharaoh, Egypt conducted military campaigns as far east as Phoenicia, which is in modern-day the Lebanon, and Nubia, which is modern-day the Sudan. The edge weapon used to forge this vast empire was the khopesh. It is a sword-sickle hybrid that was designed especially for cutting and slashing. As time passes, new empires come and go, and as the power of Egypt began to wane, Babylon took its place. Like with the Bronze Age, to create the iron sword, a few things were needed. Iron ore is found in sedimentary rocks and the process of extracting the ore is done by the repeated smelting of those rocks at around 2,282 degrees Fahrenheit. This is done until there is no remaining rock particles left. Then, again, this molten iron must be poured into a mold of the sword that they tend to make. However, unlike bronze swords, iron swords must also be forged. This is the job of the blacksmith, and without this process, the metal will be too brittle to use in combat. So, at the forge, a very high and open heat that turns searing hot metal to orange, and then the hammer is used to pound the hot iron not only into its desired shapes, but to compress the metal together to add the desired strength to this edged weapon. The films 300 and Alexander are the films that portray this era. Swords that were larger than daggers, and a design that is most effective for stabbing and slashing from behind a shield and or a shield wall. Although the iron sword would grant both the Persian and Macedonian Greeks vast empires, iron swords were prone to rust. The clock began to tick after every iron sword was made. So then, as empire gave way to empire, so did sword metal give way to another metal. Steel, to coin a phrase, was a great game changer. Steel is an alloy of iron and carbon. It is literally made from the exact same sediment rock from which iron was extracted to create the iron sword. But it is far stronger and more durable than iron, nor is it prone to rust. The Roman Empire was forged at the end of the steel sword. The gladius sword, which was the name of the sword that was taken from the gladiators of Rome. It would lead the Romans into an open war with the great empire of Macedonia. At this point in time, the gladius was about 85 centimeters long and weighed 900 grams. Its very sharp and pointed edge was very effectively used from behind the protection of the large rectangular shield to thrust into the chest or abdomen of the opposing army. Gladiator is the film that comes to mind to most of us for this time period, although Spartacus is actually more of an iconic film, and we all know the phrase, "I am Spartacus." However, it was the film Demetrius and the Gladiators from 1954, starring Victor Mature, that was my earliest experience with films portraying the Roman Empire. It showed how the Roman legions formed their lines and fought with great tenacity, and thus continued the age of steel through the centuries. By the Middle Ages in Europe, the swords became very long, and many types were created from many nations and kingdoms. However, there were at least two main types, the broadsword and the longsword, some of which were at least 5 feet long, and with it came the art of swordsmanship. In one of my most favorite films, Kingdom of Heaven, that is a director's cut only, of course, the swordcraft of this era was discussed in a few scenes. We also learned that there were 3 guard or defensive stance positions: the low guard, the mid guard, and the high guard. The high guard, also known by the Italians of the era as La Posta del Falcone, or the Guard of the Hawk, is the favorite one used by our main protagonist, Balian of Ibelin, a blacksmith, who, as we all know, was played by Orlando Bloom. At first glance, the high guard looks as if it leaves the knight open to frontal attack. However, this position most effectively uses the laws of physics to overwhelm an attacker. It is because of the striking downward angle from so high up adds more speed and weight to the sword, giving it more power in both blocking and striking the opponent. In Japan too, this time frame are making one of the most greatest pieces of art of all mankind, the Japanese sword. 10 layers of steel are crafted over many months to create a single-edged sword so that it is so sharp and so strong that it could cut through 10 men in a single swipe. The animated film series, Blade of the Immortal, portrays an era of death and destruction in an uneasy time of Japan. Never before have we seen such an art house anime as this show presents itself to us. The sword would be wielded by both man and woman, samurai, ninja, swordsman, and woman. This is an era that was ruled by the shogun, and by the blade he won many great battles with it, including the most important battle in history, the Battle of Sekigahara. Blade of the Immortal is a very intense and very graphic show, as of course in an era such as this and those before it. It is a fight for survival. That is, of course, what science should be used for, the survival of humankind, and film will be there to capture it all. This was Science on Film, Weapons of War, The Sword.